This is the Purple Passion Project with host and clinical sexologist, Dr. Stacy Friedman. This is your go-to podcast for raw, real, and irresistibly juicy conversations about sex, intimacy, connection, and everything in between. Whether you're feeling a little stuck in your love life, curious about what turns you on, or just craving conversations that actually matter, you're in the right place. So now please welcome the host of the Purple Passion Project, Dr. Stacy Friedman.
What do you get when you mix purple, passion, and permission to be your true self? This podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Stacy, and this is the Purple Passion Project, coming to you live and unfiltered. This is the show where we talk sex, intimacy, connection, and everything underneath the surface, because let's be honest, small talk is boring and you're ready for the good stuff. So relax, drop your guard, and get ready for some truth, laughs, maybe a few gasps, and a whole lot of passion. So welcome back, where my passion is to help you create yours. And we have an amazing guest today that's going to help us with all of our passion and learning about relationships and attachment. Her name is Bev Mitelman, and she's a certified relationship and attachment trauma practitioner, and also the founder of Securely Loved. Bev works with women, especially those that are navigating the shifts of peri and post-menopause, helping reclaim power in their relationships and their sexuality. And we're talking attachment theory today and how it shows up in dating as well as the bedroom. And she believes that radical honesty is the key to real connection. So let's get into it. I am going to invite Bev on. Hello, there she is.
Hi, Dr. Stacy. Thank you for having me on.
You're welcome. I was just a little tongue-tied. Connection. You know what I mean.
I do. By the way, I have to tell you, I love the name of your podcast. It's Purple Passion.
Thank you. Well, it's all about passion. My passion is to help you create yours, and it's all about purple.
It looks great on you.
Thank you. I am a purple fanatic. Purple nails, purple car, purple outfit.
You're all totally on brand.
I am totally on brand. Well, it's great to have you here. And I know that a lot of people are going to get a lot out of this, because we all want to have happy relationships, and we all want to learn how we can affect our relationships. So I think it's going to be an important subject. So speaking of attachment styles, I just want to get right into it and explain exactly what are attachment styles and how does it affect our relationships.
Excellent. So I'm happy to dive in. So attachment is really about how it is that we form an emotional connection with someone else, right? Okay. So this goes back to our earliest years when we are really, really young. We're talking about infancy to about 5 years old is really when we are most suggestible. And that's where we learn the most from, who's closest to us at the time.
That's where we soak it up.
It's fun. Yeah, it's almost like a blank slate, right? So whoever is closest to us at that time, usually a mother or father or some parental figure, we're going to be absorbing all of their, not just their language, but their body language, their tone, and how it is they deal with any type of emotional situations. And we're going to learn, okay, this is what it looks like to give and receive love. And so when we're talking about attachment styles, we're talking about a set of learned behaviors, right? It's learned. It's absolutely learned behaviors, and everyone has an attachment style, which is what makes this topic so interesting, right? Yeah. So we have 4 broad categories that we talk about. The first is someone who is securely attached. So this is really the utopia, sort of what we're aiming for. This is someone who generally grew up in a home where there was good emotional modeling, there was good emotional connection. The child learned to understand their own emotions and express them. And most importantly, they learned to trust that the person they would be expressing their emotions to would react in a safe way, safe and predictable. Safe, predictable, consistent.
That's like
right?
The healthiest. That's kind of considered the healthiest attachment.
Yeah,
right?
secure attachment, right. And so, when we talk generally about people who are securely attached and insecurely attached.
Okay.
And insecurely attached is really just a set of strategies that we've developed because we weren't necessarily getting the emotional attunement that we needed as a child, right? So those who were securely attached, they had that emotional attunement.
Right.
And so they develop a sense of safety in regards to understanding themselves, so higher self-esteem, in regards to trusting others in the world around them. And so you could imagine these folks when they grow up, they do very well in long-term relationships. They can honor their independence, but they also like being in partnership. They understand boundaries. They can express themselves well. They have a good communication style. And so really this is what we call emotionally healthy people, generally speaking. And they're the ones that we find in longer term relationships and marriages.
So when you see people that have healthier marriages, it's usually because growing up, they've had a little bit more of a secure connection with parents, family, people who raised
Yeah,
them.
more often than not, right?
Right.
And it's interesting
That makes
because we
sense.
used to
I mean,
think it does, right? We used to think that if someone who came from like this is sort of, old style thinking, but someone who came from a broken home,
right.
they themselves would be broken. That's not exactly the truth. What it is that a child is going to learn based on what they're feeling, seeing, experiencing, hearing. So if you grew up in a home whereby, for example, your parents were always fighting, there was yelling, one was always walking out of the room, slamming the door, ignoring the other one, that's what you learned. Versus a couple who said, you know what, you and I are not seeing eye to eye, but I still love you. That's okay.
And that would explain why so many people get into that negative pattern because it's what they're used to, it's what they know.
Right. We talk about this often, right? So the patterning that I'm talking about, this learned behavior, it's stored in our subconscious mind, which means we're not even aware of it. When we as children, if we grew up in these different environments, and I'll talk about the other styles in a moment. When we experience these things, we then store these as patterns, right? And they actually become our gauge for what is normal, what is familiar, right? And so we tend to replicate these experiences as we ourselves grow from childhood into adulthood. And we most commonly replicate them in our romantic relationships, right? So
Right.
attachment styles very much affects all relationships to yourself. So the attachment style that you have will absolutely affect the relationship you have to yourself, to your family members, to your friends, to your
Friends, I was gonna
colleagues.
say friendships too, yeah, and work relationships,
Absolutely. But it
yeah.
shows up strongest in your romantic partnerships.
Well,
And
because
the
that's where you usually feel more connected or close or, you know,
Yeah,
intimate.
and that's exactly it, is that, we tend to afford our romantic partners a level of trust that we don't
Right,
often afford others, right? That level of closeness, and it most closely resembles the relationship that we once would have had with our caregivers. And so, we tend to, as a society, make jokes, right? Because, a daughter's gonna pick to marry her father or get but
right.
there is some science behind this, in that we actually do tend to operate in what's called our subconscious comfort zone.
So let me ask you a question. So then when you have a situation, I just thought of it because of my family. When you are divorced and you're divorced young and the kids are seeing a couple different relationships, they're seeing, let's say, the first one, which maybe brings them one attachment style and another. So maybe the first 3 or 4 years they see one, and the other 3 or 4 years they see another. Does that help them kind of, I don't know if you want to say pick or choose, but does that change their attachment styles?
So your attachment styles, like everything else in the body, is malleable, right? Like we talk about neuroplasticity, we can build new pathways in the brain. We talk about our body, if we want to, for example, put on more muscles, we can do that. So our attachment style absolutely can change over time. The initial templating, I would say, usually happens in those first couple of years, 0 to 5. So,
Right.
this is, and it depends again, not necessarily that they're seeing one style or another, but the child is going to determine how safe or unsafe they feel.
Got it.
Right. So there's certain behaviors that a child needs, mostly consistency, predictability. That if they may have a parent who is, has a, let's say, a disorganized attachment style, but that parent is able, for the most part, to be consistent and to be predictable for the child, which is not always the case, but let's say,
Right.
then they'll generally be okay. They'll generally have an understanding that they can express themselves, and you learn from your environment.
Right. Absolutely. And I think that you still learn even when you're older, but like you said, those first 5 years, it affects probably like the whole nervous system, the whole
Yes.
mind, everything, all of that.
Exactly. And it was so fascinating for me on a personal level, because when I found this work years ago, I didn't realize how much of my nervous system was affected by my own childhood experiences and my own attachment style. And so it really is pervasive in terms of your attachment style playing such a central role in
Right.
guiding your thoughts, your emotions, your behavior. Again, most people are really unaware of that. And so most people will just say, I do these things because that's just who I am. It's not actually, it's your programming, right?
Right.
It's what you've learned. It's not who you are as a person. And so when we
Because you can
dive,
change it. I mean, you can change it with maybe some therapy or some acknowledgement as to what it is, or to even realize that there's something there to change.
yeah, so just like anything else, because it's learned behavior, you can unlearn it and relearn. Yeah. But the first thing is to recognize that you have these patterns. And for a lot of people, that's kind of confronting,
Hmm.
right? These patterns develop out of a sense of survival. So, what are we talking about here? We're going to, I'll dive into the other styles a little bit so folks know what we're
Sure.
talking about.
Yeah.
We have the broad category of securely attached, and then the other broad category of insecurely attached. Now, we place the statistics in North America to be about 50-50. Some people say 60-40. For
Right.
argument's sake, 50-50. So 50% of our population of adults in North America, let's say, have an insecure attachment. And out of the insecure attachment, there's a spectrum of what actually develops. We have some folks, about, let's say, 35% to 40% of the group, who are anxious, preoccupied. And those who are
Is
anxious,
preoccupied.
mhm, that's
Okay.
the actual term. Yeah, anxious, preoccupied. Not to be conflated with someone who has, for example, generalized anxiety.
Okay.
Although we see that often, right? So someone who is anxious, preoccupied, their emotional state is generally they feel lonely, they feel sad a lot of the time, they feel regretful, they are nervous, they are on edge. Oftentimes, these are people who didn't have a predictable relationship or emotional attunement from their caregiver, right? These are people who often had to perform to earn love. They were
Got
only
it.
recognized if they did really well in school or if they helped mommy cook dinner. They were often parentified, right? They had to grow up a little bit faster. Oh, she's such a good girl. She's so well above her age, or she's so mature for
Right.
her age. Had to take on things that really probably she shouldn't have
Shouldn't have
had to
had.
take. Right. And what happens is that every single child will have to make an unfortunate choice at some point or another, because our attachment to our caregiver is so critically vital to our survival when we are that young.
Hmm.
If the child starts to display certain things about themselves, maybe an emotion or a thought can verbalize, or even through their physical behavior, that is not well received by the parent. What happens is the child learns very quickly, I'm not to show that part of myself. And so that is the really early seedlings of, self-disconnection, self-abandonment. I'm going to abandon my authenticity in order to preserve the connection with my parent. So I'm smart enough to recognize that if I start crying, my mother's going to get annoyed with me because she doesn't like that I cry. So even if I'm sad, I'm not going to cry. I'm going to pretend that I'm fine to make sure my mother is not annoyed with me so she doesn't withdraw her love from me. This is the early seedlings of that. And so someone who has learned that as a pattern, they generally grow up where they fall into, a group of people that, for example, people pleasers, right? They're extremely,
Well,
they're
they're afraid
extreme,
of someone not wanting them or loving them or
right?
being friends with them. Because
Or
it, like you said,
leaving
it goes,
them.
right, because it goes into friendships too. It's not just relationships for intimacy. Yeah.
Yeah,
Interesting.
absolutely. And so it's really interesting because they develop a real set of specific characteristics and behaviors to try and always, I would say, close the gap in terms of proximity. They always want to have a level of closeness and proximity to their friend, their romantic partner, whatnot. Distance feels unsafe to them.
Got
Distance makes them feel like, "Oh my god, what did I say? They're going to leave me. I better not say that again." Right? And so they become really, again, disingenuine without realizing that they're hiding their true self
right.
because they're trying to please others.
Right.
So, I'm gonna put a pin in this for a moment. I'm gonna say, think about how that might actually play out in the bedroom. Right? Where we're talking about focusing on someone else's needs to make sure they like you so they don't leave you because that's more important to you than being your true self.
Right. And
Is
we
that what?
have women so many times saying that I'm just there to please my partner. I don't need anything, it's all about my partner.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Like, I'm good. Yeah, no, it's really from the small
Yeah.
stuff, right? What do you want for dinner? Oh, what you choose. I'm good with anything. Are you? Right? Like, we
We
all
need
have
to
preferences.
use our voice, be able to get that confidence to use our voice to know that that person's not going to leave, or,
Yeah.
and
But
if they
when they were
do, that it's okay. They weren't meant to be there in the first place.
right. And the reason they stopped using their voice is because they learned in childhood that doing so was unsafe and it was met with repercussions,
Got
right?
it.
So that's that patterning. Now, so we were talking about, still we're in that world of insecure attachment, those that are anxiously preoccupied. And then on the other side of the spectrum, we have people that are called dismissive avoidance. Now, dismissive avoidance also didn't receive the emotional attunement that they needed. Oftentimes, what we find when we do a little dig in their background is a lot of emotional neglect. And so the parent was unavailable, or there were too many kids in the home, or they grew up in a very stoic environment where we didn't talk about things, we just sweep it under the rug. Or maybe it was a high demand religion, or maybe the mother was absolutely suffocating and the child learned that, you know what, emotional connection is just too taxing, it comes at too high of a cost. Whatever it was, that person decided at some point or another that being independent was the way to survive. I cannot
I
rely
don't
on
need
someone
anybody
else.
else. Right.
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 So our society tends to really value, or, talk about, people who are independent. But like when someone is highly dependent to a fault, usually a trauma response, in that they have a great amount of trust for themselves, but they're not trusting others. So I learned somewhere along the line that what is the point of asking others? They're just going to disappoint me.
Right. And so many people are, you know, you look at people that are like that and you think, God, they're so strong because they're independent.
Mhm.
But I always say to people too, they're like, well, I don't want to cry. I don't want to open up. It's like the strength comes in that
Yes.
opening up and being that vulnerable person. But it makes sense now why sometimes people don't, is because they're not able to. That's what they've learned. So
That's what they've learned. Yeah. And so being vulnerable either wasn't tolerated, or they were heavily punished, or they were criticized, but they learned early on that sharing their feelings was not safe. Right. And so they have, for the most part, really disconnected from their emotions. It's so interesting when I talk with dismissive avoidance, like 9 out of 10 times when I say, what type of childhood did you have? They will say to me, it was fine. It was a really nice childhood. Like I had, a warm bed and 3 meals a day. Because often they don't even remember.
right.
They don't see emotional attunement as something that they ever needed, although they did, right? And they're extremely rational. They live in the intellectual world because they're underdeveloped in the emotional world. So they're logical, they're rational. I had nothing to complain about. I had a warm home and 2 parents. Well, did anyone ever give you a hug? No, that wasn't needed, right?
It's
That sort of thing.
right. Yeah. And that's the same thing like when people have a hard time sharing and speaking their emotions. Well, did you ever hear your parents say, I love you? Did you ever, you know, and a lot of times people will say, no, my parents really never said, I love you, which is why a lot of times they can't say, I love you because it's uncomfortable.
It's uncomfortable. It was never learned. It was never taught to them. It was right. Like, so they didn't have the emotional modeling. So that's exactly true. And so someone who's dismissive avoidant is generally, hyper independent. They can be seen at times as standoffish. They're very slow to warm up to relationships because they have a hard time trusting others. And they will protect their freedom, their independence. They're afraid of losing themselves, right? Of being engulfed by
Right.
someone else's emotions. I mean, they really don't navigate their own emotions well. They avoid them for the most part. That's the dismissive avoidance part. And they will avoid yours too. And so, you can see how, again, we have, let's say, 2 children who both grew up without emotional attunement, but very different experiences. And child A develops one set of coping techniques. I'm going to be really complacent and people please, and I'm going to be really easy to love. And the other one, develops a completely different strategy where it's like, I don't need anyone. I'm good on my own, me, myself, and I.
It's so funny because I do coaching. I'm not into the mental health therapy part because my degree is more on the coaching sexual health. And so, but I do work with a lot of people in this space, and I do refer out when it has to do with the mental health. But it's very interesting just seeing how when I do ask some of those questions, how people that have brothers and sisters, they are different. Many times you're like, well, why could one kid be like this and one kid be like this when they were brought up with the same parents? So
It's such a great question. And Gabor Mate, he's one of my favorite, actually. He answers this question because he's heard this a lot in terms of, siblings who had the same childhood, is how it's usually phrased. But he said there's really no such thing because, children
they're
come
treated
into
differently too.
they're treated differently. They come into their parents' world at a different time. They have a different relationship with the parents. They have a different set of needs, and their characteristics will trigger the parent differently than another sibling. So they're really, and what's interesting also from a personal standpoint is I have an identical twin sister.
Oh, how
And
fun.
so we arrived in the world at the same time. We look the same, although our personalities are different. And we both developed pretty opposite attachment styles. And subconsciously, she chose this strategy, and subconsciously, I chose another strategy. Neither one of them was good. I think we were just both trying to survive.
Right. Right. Very interesting.
It
Very,
is. Yeah, I know, especially when
I mean,
the twin study.
it just makes things make a lot of sense when you're trying to figure out relationships. That's why I refer out to those types of things, because I'm just like, let's talk sex.
Yeah, I mean, I don't blame you. That's the
Relationship
fun
figured
stuff.
out. Let's talk
Yeah,
sex.
that's the fun stuff. So the dismissive avoidance, just to kind of finish off, they generally they avoid vulnerability. They really don't like that. They're very slow to get into relationships. They're often the ones, who will do things like in the dating world, will ghost you, will, want just sort of a short-term sexual relationship. These are the people who want to do anything and everything to sort of keep it surface, like who won't put a title on a relationship, let's just see how it flows, that we hear. This is a group of people that we're talking about. And again, it's guided by the fact that they don't really, they're not seeking for something emotionally grounded, right? They will see that as too much.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
they don't want someone dependent on them, and it'll overwhelm them also, right? So they don't really desire that as much. Now, the last category, and then we'll talk about sex because it's so much
Sure.
better.
One more, we'll take a quick commercial break, and then we'll get back to sex. So go on, finish
There.
up.
So there's one last category, the fourth category, that's called disorganized attachment, or the fearful avoidant. And it's called disorganized actually because this person will display traits of both the anxious, preoccupied, and the dismissive avoidant. And so they have a blend of these characteristics, which can be absolutely confusing for the person themselves and anyone who's in a relationship with them. And oftentimes what we see is these people develop this type of hybrid attachment style when they have lived in a home where the environment was incredibly chaotic, unpredictable, and oftentimes abusive.
Okay.
And so we see that often. And what happens is that these individuals, they're called the hot and the cold partner, where they desire the closeness. Most people desire a level of connection and closeness, but it scares them and they pull away. So like, come to me, but not too close,
Right.
like, let's spend the weekend together, but then I need 3 days apart from you. That's sort of what we see, the on and off.
Confusing to the other person in the relationship, I guess, I would assume.
Very much so.
Yeah.
And so I spent my whole life as a fearful avoidant. And it was confusing to me as well. And not just to the other person. But which is it's beautiful in that when you start to understand your own patterns, and they're just that, they're patterns, you
Right.
can understand why you're doing what you do. And you can not only make changes, but you can discuss it with your partner. You can say, you know what, we've spent 2 great days together and I feel very loved by you, but I need like 2 days alone now just to sort of decompress. And to get to that place of understanding and to communicate it, it's a blessing, right?
Oh yeah,
Because
that the communication's what's needed, because otherwise the other person is just lost sitting there going, what just happened? What did I do wrong? Why are we not, connecting? We just had a great weekend and now she doesn't want to talk, and it can be confusing. So to be able to understand that for yourself is huge. To be able to communicate it, be able to say, okay, I'm normal. This is why I'm this way. I just now have a name or a word or something to explain it by.
Yeah, that's exactly it. Because what we find is that oftentimes when an anxiously attached person feels their partner pulling away, it triggers panic in them because they want to get closer. And so oftentimes that's like a pivotal moment where they will, for example, pick a fight, right, to get the attention of their love interest. And so, and we don't want these things to happen, right? Because this is stress for no reason. So if you can actually understand your patterns and just respect each other's need for space, that usually helps a great deal.
Oh, that's awesome. It's good to know. And it's good to know that when people are feeling that way, that they can go to somebody like you and be able to maybe get that explanation or that understanding, so it makes more sense to them.
Yeah. Thank you.
Absolutely. No, absolutely. So let's just take a quick break now, and we'll come back and we'll talk about some more good stuff. Right back.
If you enjoy these podcasts with Dr. Stacy, Imagine the results you can get from a personal coaching session. As a clinical sexologist and certified sex coach with over 2 decades of experience, Dr. Stacy helps people just like you reignite passion, explore their desires, and break through blocks that may be holding you back, solo or with a partner. Whether you're struggling with communication, desire mismatch, performance anxiety, or simply want to feel more confident and connected in your sex life, Dr. Stacy is here to help. She offers a complimentary 15-minute consult so you can see if working together feels right. Visit drstacyfriedman.com to schedule your free call today, and let's take your passion to the next level.
And we're back with Bev Mitelman, and we're talking about attachment information. This is really a great conversation. I'm actually learning a lot that I didn't even know, and it's just very, very helpful to help people understand why maybe some of their relationships are not working so well. So hopefully we can get people to have healthier relationships through this conversation. So speaking of relationships, I want to talk a little bit deeper into the attachment theory and attachment with sex and intimacy, because we talked obviously that it affects relationships, businesses, things like that. But how does it affect desire, and how does it affect how you express yourself sexually when you're going through all these different attachment styles?
Such a great question. All right, let's dive in here. So I sort of alluded to this prior to our commercial break, where those who are anxiously preoccupied, they really have a desire for closeness. And when I'm talking about closeness, not only physical closeness, but really more so emotional closeness. They want to feel emotionally close to their partner. Whereas someone who's dismissive avoidant is trying to avoid that. They don't want to feel that vulnerability. And, as our beautiful universe would have it, these two people, the anxious and the and the avoidant, tend to date each other.
Oh,
Yeah, we see this all the time. And so it's called the anxious avoidant dance.
so it's like
Right?
someone's going like this, and then someone's going like this, and then someone's going like
Right.
this.
Yeah, and the internet's filled with all these memes. It's usually sort of portrayed as woman chasing the guy, and the guy chasing, and the girl going, "Well, what are we?" And the guy going, "Let's just see where it goes," right? So,
Right.
I do want to say for your audience that attachment styles are not gendered, which actually means that we have about the same cohort of people who are anxious, preoccupied, who are men versus women, non-binary. It's really
Good
not
to
a
know.
gendered phenomena, but we tend to display it or portray a woman who's anxious and a man who is non-committal or avoidant. So we can use that as our backdrop. But the first question to address, and I'm sure you talk about this all the time with your audience, is that sex can absolutely mean different things for
Oh,
different
absolutely.
people, right? So when we're talking about someone who is anxious, preoccupied, they're looking at sex as a way to emotionally bond,
Okay.
which I would say a large cohort of the population would agree with that, especially if you're securely attached. You would look at
That's what
you
you
would take
want in your future.
you would take a balanced
Right.
approach, right? You would say, okay, physically this feels good, but it brings me closer to my partner. There's an emotional connection. It's something I only do with them. And so it deepens that bond. So someone who's anxious, preoccupied will definitely use sex as a means for emotional connection. Whereas someone who is dismissive, avoidant, to them, sex is more often than not just physical, like a stress release, right? So they're not engaging in sex because they're in love. It's just because it feels good. They're
Right.
far more focused on their needs. Whereas someone who is anxious, preoccupied, or anxiously attached, they are going to be focused on their partner's needs, right?
Got it.
Now, yeah, we do see high degrees of limerence, like infatuation, in people who are anxious, preoccupied, and I would say, this incidence of confusing sex with love, right, in the mind of someone who's anxious, because they're getting that attention in the moment. They're getting that validation, and to them in their programming
And
that
that's
says
love.
love,
And I see
right?
that a lot in my practice where I've had to, because I do dating coaching as well. And I've had to help people understand that just because they're calling you and having sex with you does not mean that they want to be with you or they love you. But it feels so good. And I feel like we're so connected. I'm like, but you're not. You're just
Right. I mean, you might be connected in that moment. That
right,
could be
right,
true. But
right,
what is happening after and the day after or the day before, like
right,
all of that matters.
right,
Yeah. Yeah, you're absolutely right. So we find even people who are avoidant. I'm sort of going back and forth to show you sort of the differences between those who are anxious and avoidant. People who are avoidant sometimes will actually even disconnect from when they're having sex, where it really does become a physical act. And so if there's an exchange of loving, caring words, it might actually ruin it for them in the moment, right? Like might create a performance problem, or they might say, you know what, I'm just not in the mood, and sort of step away, because that level of vulnerability scares them. Certainly doesn't turn them it doesn't make them in the mood for something more.
So, and that is, you feel trauma related, obviously, when they get to that place.
Yeah.
So, and so just real quick, because I do work with a lot of people that are in that space. And I usually do recommend therapy. Is that something that you recommend as well, to be able to work through that attachment? Because there's so many
Absolutely.
times people will do that and then they get into this disassociated state where
Mhm.
they're just doing it and they're kind of just like, okay, I'm closing myself off and I'm just there. My body is there and I'm separated. And,
Yeah, absolutely. And
yeah,
so absolutely, that's something that can be worked through. But one of the most obvious things that I see
right.
is, when I ask someone, well, when you're, making love to your partner, are you, are you keeping your eyes open? Are you looking in their eyes? That's the first thing. And an avoidant will go, no,
Oh yeah,
I
no,
close my eyes.
no. And that just reminded me, which the reason why I was asking is because I have the client where I said that she needs to do a lot of trauma work. She won't even, like, she'll have to put a pillow over her head or a
Mm.
mask.
So
So
she's
that
really
way,
afraid to be seen.
yeah, yeah.
Mhm. So it's
So
likely somewhere in her childhood that she was heavily criticized,
yes,
rejected.
yes,
Yeah. So
yeah.
she's
No,
really
there's
afraid to be
definitely
seen.
that back trauma for sure.
Yeah,
But
absolutely.
it's
And
helping me understand that too. So and I'm glad that I'm doing the right thing, obviously, by referring out and having the trauma work. But it definitely makes sense. I can picture it in a lot of relationships.
yeah, it's quite fascinating, right? Like sex is just another one of our facets of behavior. So you're going to see these behaviors in all
In the
areas. But
bedroom. Yeah.
But yeah, like someone who really is uncomfortable with intimacy, with vulnerability, they're going to avoid it at all costs. So the example of, do you keep your eyes open or do
Yeah.
you close your eyes? And I don't know if you've ever been with a partner who insisted on staring deeply into your eyes while you're making love. That's a very vulnerable type of situation. So
Yeah.
some people are all for it, and some people are going to run out of the bedroom if you do that to them.
Well, I'll tell you just a real quick story. When I was coaching and I had a couple come in, and it was a lesbian couple, and the one woman was there, the other woman was coming in shortly after, and she walked in, and the first thing she said to me, she goes, I'm just letting you know. So I said, hi, nice to meet you. She says, hi, I'm just letting you know that if you tell me that I got to sit here and look in my wife's eyes, I'm walking out. Okay. I'm not all right. And I just kind of looked at her. I'm like, nice to meet you. It was so immediate that there was no looking into eyes.
Huh?
And I was kind of like, oh boy, this is not going to go over so well.
Right. What's so great is that she immediately told you, here's my wounding. Don't go
Yes.
there. I'm not ready.
100%.
Like she
100%.
gave you a roadmap.
Oh, totally. Totally. And
Right.
yeah,
So
I was
that
just like,
that's like
don't
a little
worry.
bit of a gift, but yeah, so you can see right away when someone is so opposed to a level of vulnerability with someone
Yeah.
that they're supposed to be safe with.
Intimate and safe. Right.
Yeah, that there's something that needs to be worked through. But there's lots of ways in which we can be vulnerable during sex, right? But if we were to take a look at, for example, some of the other behaviors that we see, we know that there's like some very beautiful sexual positions that you're face to face. Even if your eyes are closed, you're still face to
Right.
face, right?
Right.
And generally those are the positions that someone who's anxious, preoccupied will favor, because again, they want the closeness. For them, it's a bonding. They want to feel your love. But the avoidant will generally much prefer and guide the sexual experience towards towards the positions where you're not face to face.
Yeah, usually
Right?
from the backside,
But I mean, from the
Let's
side,
do it
from the
down the
back,
side.
upside down, and like,
Hanging
but
from
as
the
long,
ceiling.
right. But like, where they're not forced
Right.
to look at your face and have to see your expressions, and because that's just too much.
Too intimate. Too
Right.
intimate.
So interesting.
Yeah,
Um,
very interesting.
yeah. Now, when we go back to earlier, where you're talking about the people pleasing characteristics of the
Mhm.
anxious, preoccupied folks, they're always going to be much more focused on their partner. So their core wound that they're dealing with is, I will be abandoned. So they tend to become very congenial, very giving, very attuned to their partners, by dismissing their own needs. And how does this translate in the bedroom? They become overly compliant. And
Yeah.
so I have worked with plenty of clients who say, you know what, I just can't, for example, like I can't have those threesomes that you want to do anymore. And all of a sudden it comes to light that one partner's not enjoying a threesome, whereas they never said anything before.
Right. They were just doing what their partner wanted.
Right, because
Yeah.
that's what they thought they needed to do to keep their partner. And
Right.
then the other part sitting there dumbfounded saying, if you didn't enjoy it, why didn't you
Why did
tell
you?
me? Right? Because and we've got this idea that people can read our minds, which spoiler
They should know
alert.
what I like. We've been together 20 years. I'm like,
Like,
no, they don't know.
how would they not know that I just dislike this, right? So they tend to be very sexually compliant. They tend to engage in riskier
Yeah.
behaviors. So I had a friend that was heavily on the anxiously attached side, and she started dating a new man. And within the first 3 months of dating this man, he was so insecure. He said to her, "I'd like you to remove your IUD." Now,
Yeah.
she said, and the reason is because he felt that she had free license to be
To go with other
promiscuous
people.
if she had an IUD.
Right.
Now, that's crazy. To
Right.
me, it's great, particularly because I know that she had the IUD not just for pregnancy prevention, but for other reasons.
Oh,
She was
yeah,
going
of
through
course.
perimenopause and she needed to regulate her periods. And so, but she just simply didn't have the confidence in herself to say, I understand it makes you nervous. We need to work on trust together. The IUD is going to stay where it is. And I need,
Right. Right.
no, she made an
Took it
appointment and
out.
took out
Oh,
her IUD.
oh my.
Right. And so this is what I'm talking about, the
Yeah,
level of compliance, right? It was clearly in her best interest to keep that
of
IUD in,
course.
and this,
But
but
she
she was
wanted to stick in that relationship enough. I have people that will tell me that they are so like almost proud. Like, I never tell my husband no or my, partner no, because I always want to make sure that I'm there for them. And I'm like, so you never say no because you want to do it for them? How about saying, you know, listen, I was kind of like, okay, well, good in a way, but
uh
it's not good in a way.
yeah.
No, you don't want to just not say no because you want to please your partner. You want to make sure that this is an intimate time that you are open and willing to receive and able to receive, and in the mental space and the physical space. It's not, you shouldn't just be proud that you're just saying yes every single time just to say yes.
I would
But
agree.
she's holding on, she was trying to hold on and wants to make sure that the person didn't have another affair,
Right.
so that
So if I
attachment.
give him this idea, if I'm super compliant,
If
super
I always
congenial,
say
meet
yes,
all of
right,
his needs, and
right,
I'm super easy to love, they
right,
will not leave me. which is,
Absolutely.
if you look at it, the same strategy they used as a child to
Yeah.
keep their parents' love. That's why I'm saying these patterns repeat
Yeah.
themselves,
Yeah.
right?
And it's making sense to me now too. I'm
That's
understanding
funny.
that, because I'm like, no, no, you shouldn't, I could say, no, that's not right. But to understand where it comes from is another thing. So I'm sure people are listening and being like, God, that sounds like me, or that sounds like me. And
Mhm.
it's like, yeah, well, there's a lot of you out there, I've worked with a lot of them. So
Yeah, and this is real. And a secure partner will not want you to engage in a sexual moment if you
no,
don't want
no.
that.
Right. Because it doesn't feel good for them either.
No.
They know when you're not into it. And that's what
Of
I
course
try to
they
share.
do.
If you're just
Yeah, of
laying
course
there
they do.
opening your legs, it's not, they don't care.
Yeah, no, they wanted, people who are a little bit closer to securely, connected or securely attached. They know that this is a shared experience. It's intended
Absolutely.
to be playful and bonding, and sex is a form of play. So
I have a quote in my book, and it says, if you're not laughing while having sex, you're doing it wrong.
I love
The
that.
idea is to have fun. That's what
Yeah,
it's all about.
yeah,
It's to have fun, to
absolutely.
connect. And if you're not feeling it, you don't have to do it.
You don't have to do it. And a lot of times, listen, we don't have the same libido as our partners
Right.
oftentimes, right? And again, I'm not making this gendered, whether
Oh
it's
no, absolutely.
in
I
all
see it from both
couples, there's
sides.
usually a mismatch in libido,
Yeah.
all couples. But that's okay. But sometimes we think we want sex, but we really just want a little bit of attention and validation. And maybe if you hold my hands and, we cuddle a little, oftentimes that's sufficient for what someone really
What we
wanted in the
need.
moment.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
The last thing I'm going to say about this too is that we talked about boundaries. Now, boundaries for someone who is anxious, preoccupied, they generally have a very poor relationship with boundaries. Um, they don't know how to form boundaries and assert boundaries for themselves, and they take offense almost when other people. Yeah, so make boundaries that they're intended to follow. So this is, for example, the type of friend that will just show up, "Hey, how's the neighborhood? Want to have a coffee?" Like that type of thing. Um, or, if you say, I'm really not up for going up tonight. Oh, come on, you can't back out. We really need you. Like they don't really, the concept of boundaries they don't understand it. And that's in sharp contrast to someone who's actually very good with boundaries and often a little firm. So how does this play out in the bedroom? Someone who's avoidant can say, here's what here's what I don't like. Don't do B and C. Like they'll just be very categorical,
Right.
and they'll say, and once we're done, I'd like you to leave right after.
Okay.
And they're being serious, but this will have to often be very confronting to someone who is anxious, preoccupied, who in their mind is expecting, after the beautiful lovemaking that they have, that they're going to sleep in
Fine.
bed together. Yeah. And that they're going to make bacon and eggs in the morning.
Right.
Right.
And then when
This
it
is,
doesn't happen, it's like all hell breaks loose.
when it doesn't happen, they revert back into their old wounds of, what's wrong with me?
Right.
What
Go
did
back
I
to that.
do wrong? Why didn't he want me to stay the night? They don't realize that it's not about them.
Right.
No one gets to stay the night,
So when
right?
people actually say it's not you, it's me, they usually mean it's not you, it's me.
I mean, it depends on the context in which
Right.
it's spoken, right? Like in the context of a breakup,
Right. Right.
it's not. I mean, I would say that
I'm just kidding.
no, it's a fair point though, because we hear this all the time, right?
Right.
In the context of the breakup, what that sentence actually means in my vernacular is, I don't think we're compatible. Not there's an issue with you, an issue with
You
me.
or
You're
me.
not
Right.
what I'm looking for. I don't think our dynamic is
Exactly.
compatible. It's not
And that's
aligned with what
okay.
I want.
And that's
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
So that gives us a sort of general sense of, what happens in the bedroom between the anxious and the avoidant partners. And unless you're aware of this stuff, it can be very, very confusing. So, the next time you're having sex with your partner, like, look at some of these things. Are you communicating? Are you looking in each other's eyes? Which positions do you tend to favor? Are you cuddling afterwards? Are you talking about sex as something that's playful and enjoyable? Are you engaging in things that you really don't want to do because you don't have the courage to say, hey, you know what? I actually don't like that thing.
Right. Yeah. So it's good information for people to think about for sure. So let's take one more commercial break, and then we got a few more minutes and we'll finish up. Be back in a few.
Looking to spice things up in the bedroom? Dr. Stacy's got you covered. From luxurious lotions to silky lubes and tantalizing toys, our collection has everything you need to turn up the heat and reignite that spark. Whether you're flying solo or with a partner, our products are designed to enhance intimacy and pleasure. Use the coupon code PURPLE and get 20% off your entire order. Visit drstacyfriedman.com, click the shop link, and explore our full range of goodies that are sure to bring out the fun in the bedroom. Let's make every moment more exciting. Dr. Stacy's Tantric Toys, where pleasure meets purpose.
So we're back again, and I wanted to talk a little bit about, we talked about the attachment styles and how it's kind of learned behavior. So obviously we can change attachment style. Tell us a little bit about some of the things that you do to help people change, and when people come to see you, what are some things that they can do to change?
So that's a great question. Thank you. So one of the first things we do is I like to, have a series of conversations with people about some of the things that are triggering them today. I know a lot of therapies will sort of dive right into, tell me about your childhood.
Right.
My approach is a little bit different. I want to see what is triggering you today. So the first question I normally ask is about the most recent time where you felt yourself getting emotional, right? Emotionally charged, right? And specify negatively emotionally charged. That's what I'm looking
Negative
for.
or emotionally charged.
Angry or sad, or you're overwhelmed, or you're frustrated. Tell me about the last time. And they'll say, for example, a client will say, last week I was driving down the highway and someone cut me off. I just felt such rage, and I'm the bird. and I go, okay, great. Why is this important? Because the emotions that are coming up, those emotions tell us things, right? They really guide us to the wounds that are still unhealed. Now they're unhealed from the childhood, but I want to know which wounds are coming up most frequently in today's world, right? In today's
Right.
environment. So in that case, for example, where someone cuts you off and it just throws you off, it could very well be connected to, for example, I feel disrespected, I feel unseen, I am unworthy. It could
So
be
you're
connected.
focusing on more of the feeling rather than the actual action.
The action is in response
To the
right?
feeling.
Yeah. What I'm trying to do is I'm trying to determine what the core wound is. So let's
Right.
talk about the emotion. Tell me where you felt it in your body. Have you felt this before? Oh yeah, I remember feeling this way before when so and so said that or did that. Okay, so we start making connections. A lot of people are unaware of how their body communicates to them. For myself too, I spent many years not understanding. You know, when you feel, your muscles a little tense, or your heart's beating, or your eyelid is fluttering, or you get a cramp in your foot, or you have a headache, or you feel dizzy. There's all of these things, these ways in which your body is trying to
Talk to
communicate to you.
you.
Yes. And especially a child who did not grow up with emotional attunement, they would have never learned any of these emotional cues. And so when I had a headache, I just thought it was a headache and took an Advil. I never knew that it was trying to tell me, hey, you're feeling overwhelmed, or maybe you're
You're
feeling,
reacting to something.
yeah.
Yeah.
When I felt, see, now I know this, I know what it means for me. But for years, when I felt dizzy, I go, I guess I didn't drink enough water. And I would
Right.
drink some water and sit down, which is interesting because usually dizziness comes around when I feel overwhelmed. And so the sitting down and drinking water forces you to slow down.
Right.
right?
And sometimes it's just good to just sit with yourself. Sometimes when they
Hmm.
talk about meditation, it's just sitting
Yeah.
there and just allowing yourself to feel what your body's feeling.
Yeah, and for some people meditation's great, for others it's not. Like I never believe in a one size fits all, but I do believe that you should get to a point where you start to recognize that your body does give you signals, and
Right.
that when you feel that signal again in the future, you can go, "Oh, I remember you. Okay. I know what you're trying to tell me." But that's a part of growth. So what I do is I try to understand, okay, the scenario that led you to this sort of extreme behavior, what is it tied to as a core wound? What did it feel like, emotionally and physiologically? And what were you thinking at the time?
At the moment.
Yeah, what was fueling that, right? So tell me what you might have been thinking, if you can remember it. And we'll have a couple of those conversations, and generally you'll see patterns emerge very quickly. And we can really ascertain generally very quickly a series of childhood wounds, and we all carry generally more than even who are securely attached will carry childhood wounds, but they're generally not as deep,
Right.
right? And then we try to figure out, okay, which one of these wounds is impacting your lifestyle today? And we start tackling to
Little
rewire
by little.
little by little each one of these wounds, right? So if, for example, the wound that's really coming up often for you and really intensely is I feel disrespected, then we will work on rewiring that one first, right? Because what we need to do is we need to disarm this as a trigger, right? So we want to teach people, and there is a beautiful exercise called autosuggestion, where we can tap into. I'm sure you're familiar with this,
Mhm.
where we can tap into the subconscious mind to be
Right.
able to try and form new patterns of thinking, and then of course of emotionality and of behaviors, um, on repetition. And why do we do this? Well, okay, the original wounds that you're dealing with got patterned into your subconscious mind at some point in time through emotion and repetition. So you
Right.
saw, felt, experienced something enough times with enough of an emotional charge that it imprinted. So we use that method to
To unimprint it.
yeah, like that's exactly right. Yeah,
Right.
we're going to imprint something new that's going to take over that particular pathway, right?
Yeah, it makes
And
complete sense. Is that kind of like the EMDR where you kind of, is that a little, that's a little different though, right?
it's a little different. I actually, I'm a huge fan of EMDR, eye movement rapid desensitization, which is really a trauma-based response therapy. Sorry, to
It's like
address
just
trauma.
rewiring. Right.
Yeah, it's different, right? Because it's a totally different thing, and I'm not going to speak to
Right.
it because it's not my area of
Yeah,
expertise.
no,
But
no, that's fine.
I have used it for myself as a
Yep.
patient to help me
Same.
release trauma that I had within my body that I was unaware of. And so
Right.
in connection, I believe that different modalities are, at different points in time serve
Can
different
work
purposes.
differently. Yeah. No, I
Yeah.
agree. I
So
agree.
EMDR was beautiful for me. It really helped. The attachment stuff really helped. Sometimes a person is so locked down that they just can't even get to that place of, okay, I feel comfortable and calm enough to start thinking about understanding my emotions. So if that person is in a hyper, stimulated state,
Right.
or they're chronically in their fight or flight state, right, which is like a chronic stress state, they may not be ready to do the work that needs a level
It's
of
a lot of work.
reflection.
Yeah,
It is a
absolutely.
lot of
It's
work.
a lot of work and you have to be ready and you have to be able to take the steps to get there for sure.
Yeah. I mean, it's very rewarding though. It's very rewarding. And one of the questions that I get often is, do I have to heal my attachment style before I could be in a relationship? Well, I always want to tell people, well, we talk about 4 boxes of the attachment style, right? Secure, anxious, avoidant, and then the fearful, avoidant, or disorganized. But nobody fits into one box perfectly.
Right.
So what we generally find is people have a primary and then a secondary. So someone might be anxious, preoccupied, leaning secure, right? Which means that they have some secure traits and a little bit of this. So we'll find that. So people are generally approaching this from very different perspectives, right?
Yeah.
Not everyone is at the same starting point, but my belief, from experience, from the work that I do, is that we tend to do our best healing as humans when we're in partnership, when we're in coupleship,
I
when we
think that's
feel
when we
safe.
realize that something might be wrong, is when other people are maybe making it aware.
Often, yeah. And I include friendships in this.
Yeah.
If you have a group of trusted friends who have your back, and who can be honest with you, because that's a gift when someone is
Right.
honest with you, right? It's easier to not be honest with you because people don't want to hear the blowback.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah, but we tend to do our best healing when we are in partnership.
That's
No,
awesome.
I don't believe that you have to be healed. First of all, I think it's a continual journey, right? So I don't think it's really an end state, as like my arm has been in a cast for 8 weeks and now it's healed.
No, I think it's a whole lifetime journey for many people.
Right. As you
Yeah.
move closer and closer to exhibiting secure traits.
Right.
And absolutely within a relationship, it can be done. And oftentimes, especially if you partner with someone who is secure, you will start to absorb some of their patterning too. So that could be
Like a sponge.
really, really helpful. Like a
Like
sponge.
a
Yeah.
sponge. That's
So pick
great.
your partner carefully, right? Because
Because you want to make sure you don't sponge too much from people that are not good for you.
well said.
So and on that note, I want people to be able to find you and see where they can get some information if they need. I'm going to stick up a little banner over here that's going to show your website, but let us know a little bit of information on how we could find you.
That's great. So yes, my website is securelylove.com. We have a free quiz, and people find this quite interesting. It's did you know your own attachment style? So the whole thing
Okay.
is about 5 to 10 minutes, and it'll give you some insight. That's a good starting point. Like, it's a
Oh
point
yeah.
of awareness. I also have an Instagram presence. We're on Instagram at securely_loved. I also have a YouTube channel, and the point of my YouTube is to just put out all sorts of these conversations and snippets. It's a library. I have hundreds of
That's awesome.
videos of just free educational content. So we're
Everybody
on
likes
YouTube.
you.
Yeah, I know. It's a good price.
Yes.
So we're on YouTube at Securely Loved. That is the YouTube channel. And so, yeah, and Securely
Awesome.
Loved is actually a collective of relationship and attachment practitioners. It's not just me. I'm the founder, and I tend to do a lot of the interviews on podcasts. But I've got some amazing people that I work with who are very good practitioners. Some work specifically with people who are dealing, for example, with issues of sobriety, and others work, for example, specifically with men. I have a male therapist that works with us. And so people really have the option to go, okay, which one is really going to
Awesome.
feel most comfortable for
Yeah.
me?
No, that's good to know. That's definitely good to know, because people need all different needs and can
Yeah.
connect with different therapists as well. So thank you so much. This has been such a rich, deep conversation. I know that listeners are going to be walking away with so many aha moments, or, listening and thinking oh, that sounds like me, about love, sex, about even themselves. So if you all want to learn more about Bev and her work at Security Love, make sure you follow her. The website's on there, and it's also going to be in the show notes. And don't forget, whether you are securely attached or still figuring it out, everyone deserves connection to feel safe and feel loved and feel real. So thank you so much. We're going to finish up with this podcast, the Purple Passion Project, where we keep it real with just the right amount of spice. And we are going to say goodbye to Bev, and we'll see you next time. Thank you so much. If you've loved what you've heard and you want to subscribe, make sure you go to my YouTube channel at drstacyfriedman.com. You could follow me all over social media at Dr. Stacy Friedman for resources, finding some fun adult products just for personal support as well. Until next time, stay curious, stay turned on, and never apologize for wanting more. See you next time.
This has been the Purple Passion Project with host Dr. Stacy Friedman. Tune in each week as Dr. Stacy breaks down walls, busting myths, and gives you permission to want more with no shame, no filters, and definitely no small talk. Check in every Monday, 7 p.m. Eastern, on your favorite streaming platforms. We look forward to seeing you next time. Be sure to visit drstacyfriedman.com to learn more.